Hoje, vamos embarcar a numa jornada única a bordo do OceanXplorer, a navio de exploração científica mais avançado do mundo, verdadeira plataforma flutuante de descobertas, e ele esteve ali na São Vicente. Equipado com laboratórios da última geração, submersíveis capazes de alcançar profundidades de até 6.000 metros e tecnologia de mapeamento de alta resolução. Esse navio é mesmo incrível. E graças ao convite da Embaixada dos Estados Unidos da América ali na Cabo Verde, me tive esse privilégio de explorar esse navio extraordinário. E agora é boa vez de mergulhar a mim nessa experiência inesquecível, onde que ciência, inovação e paixão pelos oceanos te encontrar.
Okay, nice to see you, and welcome everybody to the bridge. So this is our first stop, and then after this we're gonna go. But let's see. So easy, be free for a quick. Well, everybody meet. We have Ross first, Chief Officer, and Second Officer Izzy. Izzy's gonna give us a little rundown of what happens here. Well, Izzy, the stage is yours.
Hello everybody, have you all took a seat in the chairs? Have your pictures, feel free to take it in turns if you want to. Don't worry if you miss these ones, I have more cool chairs at the back as well. So welcome everybody on board OceanXplorer. Is this your first stop of the day? Yes. I'm going to say I think I passed you all in the stairs, running up the stairs. So really good place to start. One, because you are now at the top of the stairs, everything is downhill from now, so that's good to know. And also because everything that happens on this ship, all the planning process of getting from A to B starts on the bridge. So the station you're looking at now is the forward bridge console station. So anybody who drives a car, you can kind of equate this very similar to the passenger seat and driver's seat of your car, with all of the various equipment in front of you to help you drive. Just realised I never even introduced myself. Hello, I'm Izzy, and I'm the second officer, which means we drive. So a couple of things that you're looking at right now that will assist you is one, you have the ECDIS. When we go to the aft station, we will walk around this way and you will see a huge table with this on it. It's touch screen, feel free to have a little go. And that's where we do all of the navigational passage planning. So the science team's downstairs, they tell us what kind of places they want to go to, and then it's our job to put that into the system. Everyone kind of asks me, but you've got all the space in the world, why do ships crash? You can go anywhere you want. But I will show you, if any of you are interested, that's just not true. Just because you can't see it out of the window, you will see on the navigational charts, driving in the sea is very similar to driving on the motorway. There are lots of different shipping lanes, lots of areas we can't go because it's too shallow under the water. And lots of people who we have to talk to on a frequent basis. So one question about this one, and then I'll move on to the back station, is was anybody expecting a big pirate wheel?
Yeah.
So you thought, you was excited. This is our tiny little pilot. And the reason why this is so small is because we're not actually driving using this one at all, really. So what makes this ship so special from our perspective, and I won't get too technical and bore you too much, but any of you, let's take this ship for example that's on the side here. Most ships are driving with a conventional propeller and rudder, meaning the propeller spins, pushes the ship forward. When you turn the wheel, that turns the rudder and the ship turns around. It's very nice. But a turning circle for a ship that size can be up to half a kilometre, which with us, with tiny little ROVs in the water, is just going to be of no use. So instead, we drive using a very complicated thruster system. So very simply, if you look on this diagram here, you have two at the back, it's these two, this one forward, this one, and these lateral ones here, which is here. And I can turn each one of these independently 360 degrees all of the way around. So what that means is instead of using half a kilometre to bring the ship around, I can now just do it on the spot, on zero. This ship can also move side to side, which is very special. It's very difficult to make a ship move side to side. And if I'm feeling absolutely lazy and I just want to kick back and enjoy my coffee, we have autopilot, which is all just controlled from this tiny little stick here. Does anyone have any questions about here before I take you somewhere else? This station looks very similar to the forward station, but now you are looking at the back of the ship. And probably to you guys, you're thinking, well, the chairs are a little bit cooler, but everything looks pretty much the same. You agree?
Yes.
Yeah. That's because it's made by the same people. And it looks nice. This is actually a completely separate system entirely. You cannot run the same systems together. I get asked that question quite a lot. So I don't know if anyone's told you, but this ship was previously is a refurbished ship which OceanX bought and converted into this ship, and this was one of the main selling factors for buying this ship. So what's very special about this is it's called dynamic positioning. Has anybody heard of it? Probably no. It's quite specialised, quite niche. So everyone's familiar with the concept of autopilot? Yeah. Tell the ship keep going and it goes okay, I'll keep going. Well, this station now says tell the ship to stand still, stay still, and it goes okay. So it seems like it wouldn't be that much of a difference, but it's a very, very difficult thing to do. And that's because a ship is not connected to the ground. So you have no brakes, you have wind, you have swell, you have lots of forces pushing the vessel around all of the time. So to tell a ship to stay in one position is incredibly difficult, and that's why you need a whole system in order to do so. So very briefly, the satellites will tell it where it is. You will press this button twice to make sure you don't accidentally elbow it, and it will create a grid. You can also see a duplicate screen there. The ship on a grid, and then it takes some time to measure how far you are being pushed and in which direction you're being pushed off that position. So after some time it will go, okay, I know what's happening, becomes smarter, starts to predict and learn the movement of the sea, and it can keep the ship on a position of about 10 centimetres accuracy. The whole world, very smart. And that's really important for us because now you're facing backwards, and everything science related that you're about to go and see and take pictures of, it's exciting. We often have everything in the water all at once, and if the ship stays still, then I don't need my job, you just come press a button and it leaves. But ROVs and submersibles, they don't like to stand still. Some of them will wander off this way, some will go that way. So now it's yours. Once you've told it to stay still, you will take control of the system here, very similar to an Xbox, and you will constantly be updating that position on where you feel is the most optimal for everybody to make sure as much science gets done as possible.
Inside the sub, you've got the pilot that sits at the rear, and then you have two people either side telling us exactly what they want. With media, they'll be directing us, telling us what kind of shots that they want. So we can get some nice wides, and we can drive down past the subs on the descent down. We can do lights off completely and get the other sub to fly by. So yeah, it all depends on what the mission is.
What's the most interesting thing you have seen in Cape Verde and Ocean?
Well, the seamounts themselves were absolutely spectacular.
Yeah.
Lots of life and diversity down there. But again, with the currents coming past, it can be very challenging as well. So, yeah.
Any specific thing that got your attention?
Specific thing? I just think the amount of live coral and stuff that has really been preserved really well. Again, with the two seamounts being very close together, the currents that we would see down there, when you would go at different depths, could change quite dramatically as well. So I think that's why it makes life quite abundant down there in that area. Yeah.
I saw the photos of when you took the Prime Minister down.
Yes.
How do you mentally prepare people to get into a submersible when they're to just kind of distract them?
I think we're always quite open and honest about, the safety of the craft, our expertise on board the OceanXplorer, not just within the submersible department, but as a team from the bridge all the way down to the swimmers that we have on board unhooking us. And yeah, we just, talk to them all the way through it and try and give them as much experience as possible. But again, it's a beautiful day that we got. The weather was kind to us that day, and the visibility was absolutely tremendous down there. And so we started down at 160 metres and came right up the wall to 30 metres. And it was absolutely ecstatic with what we could see down there.
How deep are you gonna go?
How deep can the two submersibles can go to 1,000 metres. So it takes us 1 hour to get down to that depth, and we normally have about 6 hours on bottom, and then it will take us 1 hour to come back up. So a long dive if we're doing for science could be at least 8 hours in the water.
8 hours.
8 hours.
Nice.
And then before that we'll do pre-dive checks on the system. So every dive that we do, the pilots go round and check all the systems and make sure everything is good to go. So that's normally an hour and a half. And then in between that we'll do like 30 minutes up on the bridge talking about the dive location, the dive plan, what did the science team want from the dive, and then the media as well. So we try and get as much information before we even put the subs in the water.
I've read that you are studying the NOLA Islands near to Santo Antão.
Yeah.
What is, because here we don't talk about that specific spots so much, so what brings you to that specific location? What have you seen there? Because I think we don't understand much of what is there.
So we've been working with the local scientists, we've been working with Ocean Quest, and so it was a bit of a lot of planning involved, and so then when we arrived on site we do mapping of the area, which you'll get to see. And so then again, as part of these mission plans daily, we would sit down with all the leads and they would exactly tell us where they want to dive. So we ended up doing transect lines at different depths all the way up the seamounts, and it gives us then a lot more understanding of what they're seeing down there, and then hopefully when we come back the scientists have had a bit of time to go through and we can then do more detailed dives again. So again, we're always continually working with them to get our objectives done.
Primary functions obviously gather the information, the samples, the video for the science, the science team on board, and they can disseminate all of that, take the samples, preserve them, understand them, study them, look at the camera footage, understand the density of the certain species in certain areas and all that. So to do that, we've kind of got a number of components on here. Primarily, there's our T4 titanium manipulator arm as industry standard for all ROV vehicles in oil and gas, but we've got one on there, luckily enough to have one on the submersible, and it's a very, very capable arm. It can lift, in this configuration, it can actually lift 500 kilos. At full stretch, it can lift 100 kilos. It's really strong. And then we have the science tray, which actually comes out, so we've got a nice working area, and we use the arm to pick things, corals up off the seabed, or anything the scientists want to pick them in the bioworks. You can take cores of the seabed, so you can grab this for a minute, and then the seabed, and then you can study the different layers and things in there for paleo-geoclimate information, so you can tell when certain weather events are happening, etc. Little chambers here for other smaller samples, and obviously we want to segregate certain samples, which is a big thing. It's what I've been doing recently. We segregate the sponges in individual compartments, because then come back and the sponges are filter animals, so they filter a lot of water and analyse the material of the sponge, and they can tell what animals have been in that area using the DNA process. We're missing a component here that's usually a big hose which goes up to here, and the nuclear can grab it, and basically it's an underwater vacuum, so you can suck up the small gelatinous jellyfish or whatever, shrimps, fish, that kind of thing, and they go to these chambers up here. And then up here we've got our camera, it's got scaling lasers, 4K camera for video transects and other things. And we're flying along with constantly recording. And then also up there we have a CTV device, which is a standard scientific sample device. Conductivity, temperature and depth is what it stands for, but it's basically measuring the water all the time around the water. Any questions?
How does the oxygen mechanism work?
So life support system inside, we have externally, we have oxygen cylinders, and we bleed in oxygen at the consumption rate, and then we take out the CO2 inside. So we have a chemical scrubbing medium that we use, and it takes out the CO2 and we add the O2, so it maintains 1 atmosphere inside at all times.
So you don't have to wear any special equipment to get in?
No. It's just like it is now. Because of temperature and well, things, the pressure will change very slightly, but only by a few millibars.
After the subs come back on deck, or the ROV, which I think you guys are going to see in a few minutes, the scientists are all rushing, they grab all their samples, and then they bring them directly into here so that they can sort and, potentially freeze or photograph or separate. All sorts of different things happen in here. We also have these tanks. They look like tables at the moment, but these lids come off, kind of like this. These have all the baffles in them at the moment. We can fill them with water, hopefully keep specimens alive. So if we take like a coral sample and we want to hopefully keep it alive to study it a little bit, we can absolutely do that. One of the questions I get a lot is how do we handle the pressure differential? Unfortunately, we do not. So if we take something from really deep, it usually doesn't do really well at atmospheric pressure. So a lot of the stuff that we're going to be keeping alive in these tanks is from shallower samples. I can't show you any of them, but these are just an example of some of the samples. They're packed and ready to go, unfortunately, so I can't really show you anything, but these are samples from our last mission here in and around Cabo Verde. We have the suite of instrumentation here behind me. So we pump seawater from the vessel, port or starboard side. We have 2 pumps. Right now we're running, well, it's off at the moment, but we would be running the port side. Just kind of split the load on our pumps. I measure the temperature of the water right at the intake, and then about 3 or 4 meters down line, I measure it again, and I also take a salinity measurement, so we know the temperature and the salinity of the water. So kind of good indication of the water quality, what's going on in the water. And then that gets pumped all the way up here, and I take a second measurement. So this is called a TSG, and it measures temperature and salinity. It's a thermosalinograph. That measures temperature and salinity, and then the water goes out into here, and this is our transmissometer. So this is basically shooting a little laser through here, and it's basically telling us how cloudy the water is. It's kind of like a merc detector. And then from there, the water flows into our fluorometer, which is measuring fluorimetry, which is a good indication of chlorophyll in the water, and thereby phytoplankton, so we can get a good estimation of the amount of phytoplankton that's in the water. And that's important because phytoplankton are the basis of the food chain. So no phytoplankton, no megafauna. So it's a good indication of ocean health. And then finally down here on the end we have our nitrate sensor, and that's just this is a brand new sensor. We put this on January, so it hasn't been running very long, but it allows us to measure nitrates in the water, and that can too many nitrates can cause algae blooms and all sorts of bad things, or vice versa. And then the water gets overboarded. We also have some NASA equipment. We did a project with NASA just recently. Not all of their equipment has gone home. It's also measuring primarily phytoplankton and different types of chlorophyll and fluorometry in the water. We have generally in this lab kind of everything you might need down here for managing wet samples as they come out, and then we can store and freeze them. So we have a -80 over here, a -20, and then just a standard refrigerator. And then outside, it is turned off at the moment, just because it's very noisy, but we do have a liquid nitrogen generator to generate liquid nitrogen if we need to flash freeze our samples and some of them. If you guys have time, I don't know, I can talk about the CTD hangar. I don't think we're all going to fit in there. Maybe you guys can just pop your head in as you walk by, but we have a big instrument in here. We can typically deploy it down to 7,000 meters. Most of the instrumentation on it is rated to that deep or deeper, with the exception there's a couple instruments that we take on and off. It's basically a giant rosette, and it's got a bunch of bottles on it, 24 bottles. They each hold 10 liters of water. And then kind of right above us, like over here-ish, there's a giant spool of wire. It has about 7,100 meters of wire. So what we can do is we open the door in there, the CTD goes out, and we lower it down, and we see all the measurements that it's taking. So it basically has this, but in a different form, and then this and this in a different form, as well as oxygen. So we can measure temperature, salinity, pressure, dissolved oxygen, transmissivity, and fluorometry. And we see all that data live. So we see the CTD goes down, we see all that come in live, and then the science team makes determinations on where they want to take water samples. And then we trigger the bottles close, we take a water sample, and then they come up here and we process them. In that room right there is kind of our water processing lab. It's also a giant refrigerator as well, or freezer. But at the moment we're using it for all of our water processing. So from there, then we can do DNA sequencing, we can, filter it down and, concentrate it into a small amount of water and then sequence it, or send it to a lab for further analysis. We can count phytoplankton, we can count copepods, all sorts of stuff, microplastics, you name it.
We're going to head downstairs into the dive center. Just caution, the stairs are a little narrower. And if you do, as you come and go, feel free to play. We have a couple of things.
Earth is an ocean planet. While about 70% of its surface is covered by the ocean.
I think you recognize this guy right here
let alone explore.
was somewhere there.
The ocean
Takes
impacts
pictures of
every
videos
creature
to
on
us.
the planet.
But yeah, anyway, so we have one of these stones. Feel free to, as we do this, check it out. But yeah, follow me. Let's go to the dive center.
Welcome aboard the OceanX helicopter. We're taking off to do some science in the sky. The purpose of today's flight is Imperial Megafauna. Megafauna means large animals, anything from sharks and other big fish to dolphins and whales. These creatures are wide-ranging, so using the helicopter to look for them helps scientists.
Hi everyone, good afternoon. My name's Steve. I'm not very originally scuba. I run the dive department and do some of the filming on board. This is the dive centre. First of all, hands up, is anyone a diver? A few of you guys? Oh, very good. Snorkeling? A little bit? Toe in the water?
Open water.
And the water warms up.
Open water.
So, the room in there that you've just come through, that's the lobby. So that's where you get changed into your wetsuit. Maybe there will be a video or a slideshow playing with something you might have swam with the day before. If it's October, November, December, that might be an oceanic manta ray cruising down your coastline. But this is really where the organised chaos happens. So this is the dive wet room. So you would get your little spot for the duration of the mission, pop your gear on, straight up. The side boarding platform's open at the moment onto the dive boat. Wish you out to do a dive like I did this morning, come back, straight back into place, and then we fill the cylinders right here. Anything with a green cap for the divers that are on board, that's nitrox. Anything with a blue cap's air. Nitrox is more oxygen in your breathing mix, allows you to stay longer underwater at shallower depth. The large panel on the wall behind this gentleman, the blue and the kind of orangey yellow one, that's for air and nitrox. And the smaller panel is for filling trimix. So trimix, the Latin 3 for tri, what we do is take some of the oxygen away, some of the nitrogen away, and we replace it with helium. And that allows us to dive very, very deep. So 100 meters, 120 meters, and beyond, depending on the mix. So that's what the small panel there is for. Sorry about my wet gear, I was out this morning filming. Maybe we'll split this into two. You're more than welcome to go into the other room, kind of go around to the left and then come on back, and I'll try to throw my voice. Maybe 8 of you, 10 of you can go on through. So that is a hyperbaric chamber in there. So we have our own chamber on board. In the unlikely event we had an injury to a diver, they basically would be put straight into that chamber, descends, it goes down to 60 feet, 18 meters. You would be in there with someone that you love the sound of their voice for about 5 hours, give or take, and then you're slowly brought back up to the surface breathing a combination of air, oxygen. Please don't turn any handles. Remember that? Were you here for that? Someone turned a handle when we did a tour and set off the fire suppression system for me, which was much appreciated. So that's the hyperbaric chamber. So you go in there if you had the bends or decompression sickness. Come on out, everyone, and we'll swap over. Does anyone know why it's called the bends for the divers? Anyone know why it's called the bends, decompression sickness? BENDS.
Something to do with miners and Casson's disease, or?
Casson's disease, very good. It's basically because people were in so much pain, they were bent over, and that's how it got its name, because they were in a lot of pain, a lot of discomfort. But we try to avoid that. Come on through, those that haven't seen the chamber, we can show you through here.
Esse agora nunca me tinha olhado de perto.
Vai que eu não tenho que ver até na Canárias.
There's also video and stills. This is quite a nice little toy. Now this when I put this on, I look like a Navy SEAL. Sadly, only from the neck up, not the body. But this is a full face mask or a Tom's mask. Sorry, what was your name? Sylvie. So I can say, Sylvie, look behind you, there's a manta ray, over. And you'd be able to hear me through here, and you'd be able to talk back to me underwater. Or you could talk to the submarine, or if you were presenting to us, to millions of people around the world on television, you'd have this on, I'd be holding that, and you'd be talking to the audience down the lens, and everyone can hear you in real time. The excitement in your voice, you know, that energy when you see something, the hammerheads come up from deep water and you're early in the morning and you see them coming up from the deep blue, it's all captured there because you're basically talking to us real time. Gotta like the person you're listening to. But yeah, a very nice little gadget that we use. Normally I just use hand signals. So I'm like an Italian chef in the water like this. With my hands going everywhere, asking the submarines to do something, but if it's really complicated, we put that on. That's the dive center. Yeah. Well, some of it. There's a backstage, but we don't go backstage. It's noisy and dirty. Happy to answer any questions if you guys have them, or...
And how you can hold it on the water? He fly it or he?
No. So you want to. It wants to be neutrally buoyant. So if you want to let go of it here, it just slowly drops through the water. It's heavy here, but in the water it should be absolutely. You can hold it like this.
Okay.
And you try to hold it steady. Try to, as much as possible. But all of them are just cases. So regular topside camera, like Evan's got in his hand, and it goes inside a waterproof housing that's custom made for the camera.
You put the camera inside, or?
Put the camera inside, yeah.
Okay.
Not this one goes in the one outside, but yeah, a different camera in here.
Okay.
Yeah. Rated to about 100 meters, 330 feet. So deeper than we want to go.
So what costs more, the camera or the case?
The case. And that's the most, I've got about 3 of them are bigger than this at home, and they're just sat in boxes. They're a very expensive paperweight now, because when this becomes obsolete, yeah, you're stuck with the case and going, okay, no one wants the case now because the camera's going to be superseded, so you end up with a very expensive, piece of aluminium that you can't really do very much with. Yeah.
What the most beautiful thing you have seen here in Cabo Verde?
Cape Verde. I was out this morning. It was actually very, very nice. Well, it wasn't. It was very rough, and it was a bit murky. But you have a lot of fish life here. A lot of fish life compared to the Azores, which is I know further north, but a similar type of archipelago. A lot more fish here. Had a really huge school of surgeonfish. Size of this room this morning was very nice. I want to come back when the wind stops blowing, it's black, and you get your oceanic manta rays, because you don't get oceanic mantas very many places in the world, but apparently they're quite common here, October, November, December.
Afternoon, everyone. Hi. So you've seen the subs, yeah? Dave showed you them. Three people go in them, and they go down to 1,000 meters. So in here is our ROV hangar. I'm Andrew, the ROV program lead. And this vehicle here is, unlike the subs, there's nobody goes in it. It's an ROV, so it's a remotely operated vehicle. So this is the vehicle, and in there, which we're going to go into mission control in a minute, you'll see the other part of it. But this is the vehicle, and we put this in on its own, but it goes down to 6,000 meters. So with this asset, that gets us kind of 86-87% of the world's oceans we can get to. So minus the really, really deep trenches like the Marianas and stuff, we can pretty much go to everywhere else. So it really does round the sort of boat out for its capability of being for worldwide exploration. So it's broken into like 3 parts. We've got the ROV itself, the bit that connects us to the boat. So we're always connected to the boat. So that cable above your heads goes up onto a drum, which is up behind on that mezzanine level, and on there are the 6,000 meters of cable. So right now it's 6 kilometers away from us at the minute, because he's going through that cable the whole time. So constantly tethered, so we're getting live feed up from the vehicle at any given time. So all the cameras all of the sensors, all the power. So the power is unlimited. The time we can leave it on the bottom is unlimited, and the live feed we get up is being shown in mission controls. The scientists are getting, unlike the subs where they're down there looking at it, they get it via 4.5 tons sitting here right now, but when we put it in the water, it floats slightly, and so all the yellow is syntactic foam, and then that offsets the weight of everything else. We use 8 thrusters, unlike the subs which use ballast. We use thrusters to get down, so 4 thrusters, 2 on either side for vertical, and then there's another 4 for all of our lateral, horizontal movement. Once we get down there, it's what's called a work class ROV, which means that exactly that, we can do lots of intervention with it. And pretty much these 2 arms are our hands underwater. The subs have got 1, we've got 2 of these arms, so they give us the ability to do all sorts of sampling for the scientists, like we've just done here on the seamounts, where we can pick things up with these jaws, get something like a push core, we can put it into the seabed, we get the sediment up to here, that's captured, and then we can pump it back in here, bring it back up, and then they can analyze it or freeze it or whatever. Then we've got suction samplers, so that we can get biological samples and keep them isolated. We've got biobox here we can put things into. In the back of the vehicle we've got lots of sensors so that we're recording all the time. Cameras, as I said, we don't have the luxury of looking out the window, so we use about there's 12 cameras on here which are permanently on, and then we add some of the taken away depending on what we're doing. Acoustic sonars, lights, obviously, because after 150 meters it's pretty much dark. And then water sampling, and then we will kind of take it and we'll change the payload, and we'll change what equipment's on it depending on what the science or the media mission dictates. So if we're doing lots of media, we can take all of this off and put a big camera on, like you see on the sub, or generally we're doing these transects for like we were doing here. So this is pretty much the setup for that. Okay, so this is where we this is where we fly the vehicle from. So pretty much what you see here on these 3 screens, this one is the view that we have from the cameras. So that gives us our sort of spatial awareness when we're on the bottoms, because that's why we have so many cameras, so we can see around as many sides of the ROV as possible when we're down there. On the bottom left is kind of a little sizzle reel, sort of pretty much takes you through sort of a dive sequence. So launching it down, we go down midships. That pole there tracks the vehicle when we're on the bottom, so we know where we are relative to the ship at all times. And then we use, like I said, we use all these cameras to show us where we are, and they're all being recorded all the time. So all of the metadata from these, the scientists can take away with them. So they have the position, the depth, the altitude, the heading, everything they need to know, so they can take that data back and analyze it further after the dive. So typically when we're diving, we have the scientists will all be behind the pilots, and we're pretty much facilitating what the dive plan is. So whether it's transects, whether it's picking samples up, whether it's doing media, we'll have our sort of the people who want the information. That's really what we're about, is about facilitating science in these places that we go to, like Cape Verde or Seychelles or wherever it is around the world. It's about, here we've got all the tools, and you guys, what you want to do with them, and we'll help you facilitate it. So like this here, typically we're doing this transect, these lasers, 10 centimeters apart, so they know the size of things. Here's doing a sample, so those arms, we control them using this. So this, one of the pilots is actually controlling that by moving this. So this is like a replica of those big arms, so everything you do here will happen down there. So there's 7 different joints on here, which replicate the 7 joints on the big arm. Like I said, we have 2 of them. Typically when we're in the water, we'll have one person who's co-pilot who'll be doing all of the intervention, and then the pilot here is flying the vehicle and keeping steady and sitting down when we need to, or getting a stand from the boat and back up again. And then, as well as the sampling that we're doing, we're also collecting loads of environmental data. So that screen up there, the top left screen, is all the environmental data that's being recorded all the time as well. So Like we have this geotagged huge data set that can then be taken away and analyzed and used for what those study questions are. So to help them get the answers. And obviously sampling. So this sample here will go up this pipe, and then we have a camera at the back, and they'll come into these chambers, and then we'll turn the chambers, and then they can keep them isolated. So if they're doing sequencing work and they want to do some metabarcoding or genome sequencing, we can keep them isolated so that they've got good isolated samples. Lots of information from the vehicle, sort of the health of it that we need to make sure that we get it back in one piece. And that's what all of these screens are. And then, like I said, everything else then is recorded for the mission. Vehicle can stay down indefinitely. It's just a function of how many people we have working or what other things are happening on the boat. Because as you've seen so far, it's multidiscipline, this vessel. So it's very much sort of putting all the jigsaw pieces together for how to maximize the time for wherever or whoever we're working for. So this mission we've just done in Cape Verde, we mapped for 12 hours a day, and then after we've mapped, we looked at where we want to dive with the subs to get the scientists down there in person, and then the ROV we ran the transects in a similar area so that they could then take that data away. So, and the helicopter went up and did aerial surveys, checking for megafauna at the same time, and scuba diving. Scuba would go out and do shallow water dives. So lots of things happening all together. That's the aim of this boat.
Good afternoon. Welcome to Mission Control. My name is Laura. I have Haley here with me, and we're the mapping team for this cruise specifically. So like Andrew told you, before the RV and the subs go in, we actually have to map it, so they actually know what they are going to face whenever they are down there. So here we take care of everything that's related with acoustics. So if you see in that image, you can actually see the gondola. And the gondola is just part of the ship that is below the waterline, and it actually doesn't have any turbulence caused by the movement of the ship. And there's where we have all our sonars. With our sonars, we can actually create and we can actually see how the seafloor looks like. So this image that you can see there is actually data from this cruise. So you can see nearby Septon Town where we worked, and those lines there, you can see the RV and the subs transects. So you'll see coming from the surface until the seafloor. Here on board of OceanXplorer, you can actually see the water column as well, so you can take some information using a system that is called the AK80. So you actually can do some studies regarding biomass, stock assessment using that system. Here we have all the information that we need to prepare for the dives. So we actually have here a software that we call Quincy, and we actually can put our surface and all the data that we acquired and then send it to the different computers, and then we can monitor here our assets. So we can see the subs, we can see the RV using that system that is here. So everything that is regarding sound exists here, and regarding sound as well. So the subs that you've seen, so they don't have a cable to communicate with us, right? So they need to have some kind of communication. So they use sound as well. So that little box that you have there, that looks like a microwave, is actually an underwater telephone, and that's how we communicate with the subs. So any questions, feel free to ask in Portuguese or in English. So the colors, actually, in this case, the red colors, it's like shallower areas, and if you have the bluish or a little like purple, it's more deeper waters. So it's just visualization, so you actually can change it as you wish.
Okay, hi everybody. My name is Maddie Rodrigue. I'm the Science Program Director here at OceanX, and I run all of our scientific operations on OceanXplorer. So pretty much everything that you've seen so far is my job. I also have the privilege of working with local researchers to plan and organize the expedition. So research teams in countries that we'll be working with submit their scientific proposals to me and my team. We review them all together, We review them with the researchers if they want to add things, if they want to take things away, if they want to add more and more and more, which is usually the case. We can help them plan the expedition, and then I work with them directly on board for all of the data acquisition, the sample collections, and making the schedule for the operations. So it's very, very cool to be here in Cabo Verde. We just had an amazing mission. You've seen in mission control now the maps, and our work on NOLA seamounts has been fantastic. We can't wait to come back hopefully very soon. And working with IMAR has been wonderful. We are currently standing in dry laboratory 2. So OceanXplorer has 3 dry laboratories and 1 wet laboratory on board. You've seen the wet lab, now we'll show you the dry labs. So after all of the samples are processed in the wet lab, they either come here to dry lab 2 for imaging and microscopy, or go next door into our genetic sequencing facility. So dry lab 2, as I mentioned, is really for imaging and microscopy. So we can do things like look at plankton under the microscope and do plankton sorting and counting. And we can do really high resolution imaging in 4 and 8K. We can also do 3D scanning in here with sub-millimeter level resolution of different specimen. So this is a really nice collaborative space for researchers to all be working together, looking at the tiniest organisms in the ocean. A lot of researchers that come on as well, including also our OceanX and OceanXplorer crew, often have never seen everything that can exist inside a drop of seawater. So their minds are usually pretty blown when they see something like this. It's also really nice for our students who come on because it's not an instructor looking into the lenses of the microscope and trying to describe, and one by one, everybody shuffling in and taking a turn, but actually projecting the image here so people can draw and write and annotate, and everybody can be sharing those moments of discovery together. You'll also see in this space we have a wall of consumables, consumables being the items that we use to make collections on board, or things that we're using for preservation, or things that we're using for personal protective equipment, etc. One of the things my team does is try to provide everything that the researchers need on board so they don't have to bring anything. They'll sometimes bring specialized equipment. That's totally fine. We can integrate pretty much anything into the labs. But I understand in advance what they need, how many samples they're going to be collecting, and we try to provide it here. So that way no one gets stressed about not having the right size tube. Because that's not what we should be focusing on when we're seeing things no human has ever seen before. We should be focused on all of the exciting things and how we can sort of capture those moments in those specimens. This is our molecular sequencing facility. So everything that we can do in here allows us to go from exploration, pure exploration, all the way to real discovery in the space of a single mission. So at OceanX and on board OceanXplorer, we're developing tools and technology to really help us understand these big ocean questions, such as what is all the life in the sea? Really big question, right? We're all really interested in it. One of the tools we're developing to try to get at that question, the answer to that question, is called environmental DNA, or eDNA. It's a molecular tool. eDNA is the genetic material that organisms will leave behind as they move throughout their environment. So this could be scales, it could be bits of shell, it could be mucus. More often than not, it's poop. And so what we can do is collect water from the ocean or sediment from the seafloor, or coral reefs or anything like that, and even air. And we can pull the DNA out of those samples, extract them, which is what's happening here. My postdoctoral associate, Bella, is working on the extractions from the previous mission. Pull the DNA out of those samples, extract it, we quantify it and purify it here. We see how much we have, whether we have enough so we can ask more involved questions of our sample, and then we bring it over here to our sequencing station. So please come in, you're more than welcome to. Just don't touch her station. She'll know, she'll see your fingerprint in there. You guys have seen a lot of amazing technology so far on board the vessel. It's incredible, right? We're so lucky. The most powerful piece of equipment is not a yellow submersible or a yellow ROV. It's just these little guys here. Most powerful piece of technology are sequencing machines. So these are called Oxford nanopore sequencing devices. We use Oxford nanopore specifically because of the nanopore technology. You can think of it like a living circuit board. And essentially it's these specialized proteins that are injected into these nanopores, millions of them on a little cell. And we load the cell into here, we load the DNA onto the cell, and once we send electricity through it, then those nanopores and those special proteins get really excited and they start unzipping and reading the DNA for us. And what we get out of that is the raw genetic code for what's in our sample. So all the A's and T's, the C's and G's, the building blocks for life, we get in a raw data format. And so then what we have to do is run it through what's called a reference library. So what we do is we take everything that's in our raw data and we cross-reference it against anything that's ever been sequenced in the marine environment, which are databases we update regularly. These are publicly available databases. They all live on this computer here. There are two main ones that all scientists all over the world contribute to. And we cross-reference what's in our sample with everything that's ever been sequenced in the marine environment, and we start getting it sorted and categorized and organized and labeled, and we get what sort of looks like a tree of life, a taxonomic classification of everything. Here's all the fish, here's what the fish are. Here's all the bacteria, here's what the bacteria are. And in that way, we can start getting at that really big question, what is all the life in the ocean? So we do this everywhere we go. We do this at large scale as well. So this system can run 5 experiments at one time. This system can run 48 experiments at one time. This one also does whole genome sequencing. So if we ever run into anything unknown, we can sequence the genome as well here on board. That was a lot of information again. Any questions?
Yeah, actually we have one. You said it can tell you like if there is something that has never been discovered on the seas yet. Can you tell us if you found something in our seas?
We actually, I'm going to scoop myself here. So there's going to be a press release that's going to come out. But we had some observations actually. So we didn't do any sequencing on this mission. But what we were doing was helping IMAR collect the samples that will create the first genetic reference library. So we will do the sequencing for them. Sponges, coral, different specimens. So if we find anything new, that will sort of be the first step. The observations though, the visual observations, we encountered a species that is known but has never been seen in Cabo Verde waters before. So it's called a chimera, very similar to the name of the ROV, exactly the same actually. It was like a very nice circumstance that chimera discovered a chimera. And so we have some amazing footage that will be coming out over the next couple of days, 2 weeks, with the announcement that it will be a new observation for your waters. Yeah, it's a chimera, it's a ghost shark. Look it up, it's cool.
Nice.
Good question, yeah. Awesome, thanks guys. Thank you, Mario. Thank you.
E assim, a nós termina a nossa visita ao OceanXplorer, a gigante dos mares, que mais te parece que ele saiu de um filme de ficção científica, de tão futurística que ele é. Impossível boca ficar maravilhado com esse navio. É impressionante que os equipamentos da última geração, e é igualmente incrível você sentir aquela paixão de que as pessoas é que te dedicam a essas vidas, te desvendar os mistérios do oceano. De sair desse navio com um novo sonho, de entrar num daqueles equipamentos lá e balar para o fundo do nosso oceano e a vida que lá tem. Quem sabe um dia me realizar. Se você gostar desse conteúdo, que eu vou esquecer de subscrever, Mieles Rodrigues, só para o tempo parar. Até o próximo vídeo.